Reading has been one of my lifelong loves, and I can only assume that's been the love of so many other information professionals throughout the field. Why else would we be here? And as with anything anyone truly loves, we want to share our love of reading with people, big or small, young or old. This is one of the duties of the information professional as well, to promote reading to the masses and to aid in their learning and growth, or simply for them to enjoy. Learning and personal growth are areas of reading I've always associated more with schoolwork than leisure time. However, I've found it's just as important to keep up with these things on your own time as well. The advent of the internet has had a massive effect on how fast information can be exchanged, and through this change, it also led to a much smaller world. Everything that happens around the globe has a far deeper effect on everything. For good or ill, we are in a far more global society than we ever have been in the past. What I see this leading to is all kinds of questions, worries, concerns. The need for information has perhaps never been higher, as is the need for the skills to use the technology that help them find this information in the first place. And being a good reader is at the core of effective use of tech. Short of conducting one's own investigation, reading is the best way to go about learning about the happenings in one's nation and across the globe. This need not only be reading from books either. Online articles, documents, and other areas like this are great places to go about broadening one's mind. The closer to the source, the better, of course. This is non-traditional as libraries go, but the need to adapt to the current times outweighs tradition. As one expands their knowledge of the world, they grow into a greater person and are able to do more to better themselves and their country. As more and more information becomes available online and as libraries themselves digitize their collections, information professionals should promote reading no matter the medium to help their patrons be as widely versed as possible. However, things do not always need to be so serious, and the promotion of reading simply for the enjoyment of it can be done in a number of different ways. For my LIS 635 class, I created a guide for a small collection of fiction, with the intent of it being used as a guide to summer reading program materials, all of which were created with enjoyment in mind. It was divided into 3 age groups: youth, teen, and young adult, based on the content featured in the book, and then further divided into simple, intermediate, and advanced categories based on the complexity of the book. The difficulty, of course, stems from getting the latter 2 of these categories involved in such a program, young adults especially, but even if they would not participate in such a scheme, it can still be used as a useful guide to making suggestions to patrons of these age groups that are looking for a good book. Unfortunately, the LibGuide I created to demonstrate it has been lost. Somehow, I honestly cannot guess as to how. I still have the rough outline of the LibGuide created to help me along with the process, however, and I've attached that to act as a demonstration of what I made. An idea I would like to try, but have not had the chance to, is organizing a large book club-like organization out of members of the community, or at least patrons of the library that serves said community. The idea was put into my head during a discussion with a fellow student in my LIS 600 class, in their response to a podcast called Engaging Communities Through Controversy, and it stuck with me. I pointed out some issues, such as materials. Does the library really want to invest into so many multiple copies of the same book? But in hindsight, I may have been thinking too narrowly about this. By incorporating elements of online discussion, it might be possible for a library to allow patrons to suggest books to one another, a grand chat room for the community. I believe that by doing this, a library could not only promote the activity of reading to the community, but also draw in a number of patrons. This would take a considerable effort on the part of the library, especially the creation and maintenance of the site or page that will house these discussions. But if the organization is ambitious enough, the possibility for the community to pick up a greater love of reading, and for their participation in the library as a whole, might rise. There are always simpler ways, of course, and what's important is that you are able to engage your patrons. I think that while being fancy can certainly help, it is a library's duty first and foremost to work within its capabilities, and that many different models, from book clubs to cart reading pictures and posters, can be effective if applied in the right ways to the right groups. As talked about in an earlier SLO, knowing who you're working with is the first step to success. Before I conclude, I wanted to share the requirements the American Association of School Libraries, a subgroup of the American Library Association, laid out in regards to what turns a youth into a lifelong reader. Easily accessed collections of materials, print especially, in classrooms or libraries. Contact with positive adult role models who encourage reading, teachers and librarians who demonstrate enthusiasm for reading by reading to the class, school time dedicated to reading for pleasure or learning, opportunities for young people to engage in reading, schools that create, promote, and value an environment of independent reading, and opportunities for the youth's family to engage in reading with them. I believe it is notable that each of these is strictly not a prescription, but rather a checkpoint. As I said, the methods by which an institution engages its patrons, especially younger ones, which these goals were designed with in mind, with reading will need to vary to fit the community, but that does not mean the final goal of the work will. And being able to establish consistent checkpoints that lead to that goal, I think, helps the information professional with visualizing exactly what product their methods need to produce. I believe the promotion of reading is the penultimate and never-ending goal of any and all information professionals, for any reason and for any field. The need for information in the modern digital world has never been greater, and the personal betterment that being an informed citizen of the world leads to is a nice bonus on top of that. Personal enjoyment from reading, however, will always be first and foremost in my head. A good book will always be among the greatest things a person will ever be able to experience, I think. And I think that helping patrons find their next great literary love is one of the greatest experiences an information professional can have.